again, folks. We are here for a quiet, surprise, random ramble.
Emphasis on the ramble, I'm sure.
Oh, probably a little bit. We are both very tired. However, I did say that I was going to have this out within the next week, and today is pretty much the last possible day for me to manage that. So, uh, here we go.
Why do today what you can put off till tomorrow?
Well, it's not that I intentionally put it off until tomorrow. It's just scheduling has been such a nightmare for everyone lately. People ask me all the time why I do. Hey, Legatus.
Well, hello.
Good evening. Um, People ask me all the time why I do slice and dice in seasons because most YouTube channels just kind of go all the time, 24/7. First of all, it's so that I don't burn myself out, which tends to happen very frequently with YouTubers. Um, but it's also because there's this chunk of time for like 2 or 3 months where everyone's schedules, mine included, are just so bad that it's so hard to put a schedule together. Um, and I mean, yours has been just like right out straight and awful.
I think that's probably the understatement of the year, but yeah.
But like as it is, I'm having to combine two shows I had scheduled because I can't get enough people who aren't going to keep dropping out of one of them. And so I'm combining two of them into my season finale. And so now I have this week where I just have to find something to plug in because everybody's busy. So
Crazy.
so this is how we end up doing these shows you've never seen for, a couple of months and then everybody kind of gets back on track and is ready to talk games again. So anyway, so we are talking GloomRaider. And I should have been smart enough to bring this up so that I could show pictures. But I was not because I'm very tired.
Whoa. Slacker.
I know it's very bad of me. Um, so we are talking specifically about the core book for GloomRaider. GloomRaider advertises itself as being basically ShadowDark for people who prefer AD&D to 5e because ShadowDark does have kind of a 5e base, but then simplified. Um, Sorry, my computer's being weird here. Uh, Share. Add to scene. Boop. Nope, not what I wanted. Nope. Most professional stream on the internet. Um, so this is their character sheet. It does look very much like a Shadow Dark in, what you have for gears, racial traits, like the stats, things like that. Um, this might be a little fancier. I don't think ours was this fancy.
Hmm. I don't think so, no.
Of course, it's also not really very fillable. So, not that you guys don't have, fabulous handwriting or anything.
Yeah, no, I will be the first to admit that mine is awful. There are times I can't even read my own, so yeah. No, that is fair.
Yeah, I will say, as much as I normally tend to have, a reputation as a old fogey, get off my lawn, you know, I like things the way they used to be. I do have to say, fillable PDFs are like one of my favorite things.
I can agree with that. They do make life a little easier sometimes. I've
uh,
had I've had some where like the where it's been set up to be pre-filled is so tiny that trying to click into the right field to do it has been a lesson in frustration.
yeah, well, that's yeah. So Legatus is a funny story here. what I was going to say is the reason I'm really over trying to deal with terrible handwriting is that my entire career was spent trying to read doctors' handwriting, and I'm kind of done with it.
No, and I certainly am not a doctor either. Though handwriting alone, I probably should be. Um, no, I'm the guy that when growing up, my mother always said I was going to end up being either a politician or a used car salesman. So if that tells you anything, uh, in other words, even my mother knew I had no soul. Anyway, uh,
I mean, you didn't end up doing either, so
yeah. Well, there are times where I think either would be better than what I am doing.
uh we won't make you suffer through
Mm.
that kind of conversation. Um so I am trying to find the emails. I have a number of emails that I kind of had back and forth with the creator of this. Um, I think he was actually in my chat on Monday when I was supposed to do it, and then we just ended up having to kind of pivot and do something else. But I think his preferred name. Well, I don't know. It's a B Lyle Data. I think Daeda. Um, and some of them get signed Lyle and some of them get signed B, so I am not completely sure what the preferred name is in this particular case. Um, so he gave me this. He asked me to take a look at it and to do a review. Um, and I do want to start off with the fact that he sent me an email and said that GloomRaider. He just checked his drive-through RPG sale reports. There have been 318 downloads of the GloomRaider basic rules thus far. Uh, and it is available for free, but people have paid him $62 for it. So
How long? How long has it been out?
I have no idea because the problem is that he's continually upgrading it and making changes to it, and so it's hard to see how long the
Fair.
product itself has been out.
I was gonna say
And
because
he's
like 318 downloads, if you're talking over the space of like 2 or 3 months, that's pretty fantastic. But if you're talking over the space of like 12 years, it's kind of disappointing.
and he's had over 1,800 downloads of all I can talk tonight, honest. GloomRaider products.
Wow.
Um, so he's gotten a lot of attention, um, which I think is great. I suspect the fact that, Shadow Dark is, kind of something that people are looking for lately. And I think that probably helps. We had a conversation in a different review about the fact that hooking your wagon to hello Davy Verse. Hooking your wagon to a horse that's doing well uh, isn't a bad thing. It's hooking your wagon to a horse that's doing well but headed in the opposite direction you want to that sometimes doesn't work well. In this particular case, I think he, hooked it to a wagon that worked pretty well for him.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
I think the first thing, and stop me if I'm wrong, Jack. The first thing I think that struck all of us is that it doesn't seem very AD&D.
No. No.
Um,
Absolutely not.
like I had a real difficult time, and so we did go back and look at it, and apparently part of it is that he hasn't actually made the Dungeon Master's Guide yet. So honestly, he's been selling a product that isn't actually finished, um, which made it a little difficult to play, but we'll get to that. Um, Apparently, a lot of the rules that will be AD&D esque are just not out yet, I guess.
I mean, that's fair. It's so he hasn't fully failed to deliver on his promise. It's just delayed.
Well, right, but I mean, I have to go with what I have.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I had was the starter rules, which just don't seem very AD&D to me. Um, we also ran into some issues where there were some typos. Um, so the basis for the GloomRaider armor class system is that everyone starts at 10 and then you add things to that. That's the other thing that didn't feel very AD&D. There's no THACO higher armor class is still better, which was not the case in AD&D.
Right.
You know, that was one of the oddities of AD&D was that the lower your armor class, the better off you were. Um, so in this, you start out at 10 automatically, and then you add things. So the armor spell said that it's armor class 12, which would have meant that a first level magic user started with an armor class of 22. Like significantly higher than fighters or anybody else.
Yeah, I think the intention was to have it be 12 total,
It
but
was,
it certainly wasn't written that way. Yeah.
but I had to message him to clarify that. So, um it's also funny. So he updates this regularly, which is a positive. Like, if you get this, you're going to get, the updated versions regularly as he corrects things. So he sent me 1.75. And by the time you guys got to the rules so that we could play test the game, it was 1.77. And we didn't figure out until like the day of the game that we had different versions of the rules because I had no idea that he'd updated them again.
Yeah.
If you're going in the wrong direction, you hooked up a donkey, not a horse. um, so let's see, where do we want to start? Hey, Eraser. Good evening. I have all these notes you guys gave me. Um, but do you want to?
How many of them can you actually read, though?
I mean,
Fair.
I can work it out.
All right.
So
Cool.
some of the complaints were issues with ShadowDark, not necessarily this game. There has been an ongoing issue that people do not like the fact that you have to use 3 torches in order to make a campfire.
Oh,
I
don't. Oh, jeez. Yes. That. Oh, my lord. It makes absolutely no bloody sense. I mean, I understand the thought process behind it as far as trying to challenge player. At least I'm going to guess this is the thought process behind it. Trying to challenge players to be very cognizant of supplies and not waste things. But it's just from a standpoint where in the real world you can start a fire simply with flint and steel or something along those lines, or in the fact that you're in a realm with magic. The fact that the only way you can start a fire is to use 3 torches, which you have to light anyway. It just
Well, the idea was supposed to be that it was 3 torches instead of 8. So I have since gotten a clarification on that for ShadowDark, which is that is basically intended to be if you cannot get firewood otherwise.
now
Um,
that I can
but
understand. That does make
but
sense.
but you do have to do a roll to find out whether or not there's anything in the area that isn't either too wet or too green.
Okay. All right.
So it's
Yeah.
you still, even if you're in the middle of the woods, like the first game I ever ran where this came up was in the middle of a swamp. And so everything was kind of moist. That word everybody loves. Hello, Honey Amazon. Honey Amazon is here. Um, I've lost my train of thought.
Torches,
So
swamp,
yeah,
wet,
so we were in the
moist.
middle of, yeah, they were in the jungle, everything was wet. And so in that case they might end up needing to do the torch thing even though there's woods all around them because you can't burn sopping wet wood.
I mean, not without a little, liquid Boy Scout or something like that, but yeah, I mean,
Um, yeah,
s-
so uh, yeah, apparently ShadowDark did intend for this to primarily be if you're in a dungeon and there aren't any other options, or you fail all of your rolls for finding,
and
other suitable
that I'm
burnables.
okay with, because that, it's a if it's a situation where it's in lieu of actual things to burn, like, yeah, sure, 3 torches of average size and everything would about amount the same light as a campfire, so that makes sense. But to have the rule be that you have to use them, or at least the way it's written, again, the way it's written, that you have to use them to start any fire, it just, ugh.
Well, and I think
I
that
thought my
is
head was
still
going to explode the first time I heard that. So,
I think that is still kind of the way it's written for GloomRaider. Um, but I don't know, maybe not. Maybe that's the thing that, once he finds out that that ruling got made, um maybe you do it slightly differently.
yeah.
Um Encumbrance rules people kind of had an issue with. Um they're very difficult in ShadowDark anyway. There's always kind of the balance between you've got to keep all your stuff, but you also want to make sure you've got room to bring back treasure. Um, the fact that you have to have torches in order to go anywhere, but torches take up a space apiece is pretty difficult. Um, in this particular case, armor actually took more space than it does in ShadowDark. He tried, yeah, he tried to balance that out by allowing like bags, like backpacks and bags and things. Uh the problem with that was that it was not clear how they worked. So this is another rule and regulation that I think, I don't know, maybe that will also go into the Game Master book. That's the problem, is there's so many things that I was like, well, this rule doesn't really work. And the answer was, well, because the explanation is going to be in the Game Master's Guide. Yeah, I mean, we couldn't figure out whether or not, what was it? We couldn't figure out whether or not the bags took up a space and then gave you 4 spaces, or if they, like, did they just give you 3 spaces then, or? Yeah, I think there were a lot of things we ran into that were simply either not done or were difficult to understand. Um, Hello. Oh, Davyverse has been a member for 2 months. Thank you, Davyverse. All the goats. Um, uh-oh. You done got bumped.
I'm here.
What do you think was probably the biggest issue from a player perspective that you ran into?
I don't know because a lot of my gripes on it were more like not so much the gameplay itself, but just in the rules and the character creation and everything like that. I think um the way he does encumbrance with the EV values and everything like that, especially with how large the values were for armor, I think it just really hindered character creation from the get-go because you're so extremely limited on what you can bring that you're only picking one or two pieces of armor and weapons and things like that, and not really getting to branch out. So like I know at one point I was trying to create what he refers to as a delver,
Hmm.
um, which is the system's rogue type character, and the intention was to be able to carry both a bow and quiver and some sort of melee weapon like a short sword, if you will. And it got to the point where I could do those, but then I had no room for torches or other things that are absolutely necessary. So
You didn't get to eat.
yeah, well, exactly. Either I can see at night or I can eat, but I can't do both.
Yeah, and you can't.
So
It is pretty unrealistic that you can't carry. I mean, it's not like you were trying to carry six swords at the same time.
yeah, no, it's just I literally had to choose between you would have to choose between either a sword and a bow, or a sword and rations, or a sword and torches. It felt far too limiting. And you know, uh, let's face it, your equipment is part of character development because it shows what you've been trained in. It shows what your mentality is as far as how you're going to approach any type of a combat situation. And to have to limit to only like one choice um, doesn't really lead to much in-depth characterization at all.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, yes, AD&D was extremely limited when it first came out, but realistically, um, like even wizards could carry a dagger or something. And honestly, if you're a wizard and can cast spells and you can carry a dagger, you basically have two weapons,
Hmm.
whereas now you're limiting your, you know, fighters to only having one just because of the sheer amount of space things take up.
And especially if you're playing a fighter type character, you never go in with just one weapon because you never know if it's going to get broken, lost, etc. I mean, when that's all you have going for you, you have backups,
Yeah.
and this game really limited the ability to have that.
Um, it I have to take something back. I do think that the races went really back to kind of the old style, that uh dwarves got an attribute adjustment. They were non-magical, they have special foes. Um so a lot of those are very similar to things that were original. Somebody had made a comment about the fact that they didn't like the fact that there weren't half elves, but I think that's actually an old school D&D thing. I don't think there were, half breed anything.
Not until second ed, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Um, and they don't have things like dark sight, but of course you wouldn't because that's the whole point of ShadowDark and this game is that you get disadvantage in the dark. But it does kind of take away some of the specialness of doing something like being a dwarf.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up playing an elf character, just because we have somebody in the group who absolutely
Who
hates
hates
elves,
elves?
and I just wanted to do it to piss him off for a day, and boy, did that feel good. But B, I was trying to do something a little out of the box, um, different as far as using a fighter class, but focusing on dexterity over strength. And so, I mean, I definitely went with the elf for the advantage that they have, because you can they automatically get a +1 to their dex. So to see that he kept that kind of idea of you know elves being all nimbly mimbly, uh, certainly was appreciated.
Um, Delvers also were very much more like thieves than like the rogues that came later. Uh, that I was thinking about this the other day, and then it kind of slipped my brain. He says this is supposed to be an AD&D version, but I almost think it goes back more to like the even older stuff. I think some of these are actually even older rules than. Um, ooh, I just realized I've been missing a whole bunch of comments.
Get with it, will you?
Well, normally it automatically bumps up,
Ah,
and then it didn't. Hey, Rachel, how are you? Sorry, I did not notice that you were here until just now, and I missed all of the umpteen million comments about the fact that the stream had bumped, even though I was busy trying to. I was busy trying to figure that out anyway. But yeah, I think some of these rules actually might be older than AD&D. It's kind of a
possibly.
hodgepodge. There seems to be some like box set stuff. There seems to be some AD&D stuff. There seems to be some 5e stuff, despite it not supposed to be. The armor class, definitely is.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of ShadowDark. The magic, I got a lot of comments on the magic. Um, the what was it? The wands, the wands and staves have a whole thing that say wands and staves can be used in order to direct your magic better. Um, your GM will have more information on how to do this, except there isn't more information on how to do it because it hasn't been written yet.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
there were spells that said they were an area effect, but not like what the area was, like if it was a cone thing, if it was a circle that was centered on a certain point. The sleep spell had no range, which meant it's apparently 30 feet from the caster, but is that a radius or is it straight ahead? Because if it's a radius, he's apparently taking out his entire party as well.
Right.
um
Yep.
there What was the other thing? I'm like flipping through notes here. um Some spells that need components are not marked in the table on page 41. Yeah, the table sometimes had things, it was supposed to mark off which ones needed components, but it also marked off something else. And if that something else applied, then it didn't mark off that it needed components. There's nothing about whether or not the spell components get used up. So, for instance, the bless spell needs a piece of leather that already has been blessed by um, a Templar, but it does not say whether or not they just have to bless it or whether or not it's the spell bless. And it doesn't say whether or not it needs to be a new piece of leather every time.
And that would be important too, because especially again getting into the fact that encumbrance is so strict and limited. it would be pretty important if you know you need a new strap of leather for each time you cast a spell. Well, you're going to be limited not just in your daily spell slots, but in what you're able to carry for your components.
Well, the other question was does the bless spell, if it's a bless spell, does the bless spell wear off? Like maybe the leather stays intact, but the bless spell doesn't.
Mm.
Um, yeah, Legatus. There are halflings in this game too, though I don't think anybody played one for us.
No.
Um, oh yes, the Delver pack. You want to talk a little about the Delver pack?
You mean the fact that they have only one predetermined pack of equipment and it's named after one of the classes? So 99% of the people in our group thought that they couldn't use it because they weren't that class.
Yeah, instead of being called an adventurer's pack, it's called a Delver's pack, and everyone was very confused because they thought that meant they couldn't take it. I've we finally decided that it had to be that he just used the same name for multiple things. Which I mean, to be fair, was kind of a D&D thing. Like you went down a level in order to go up a level.
Right.
You went down a level in the dungeon in order to earn the experience points to go up a level.
Right.
Um, yeah, it got confusing,
Yeah, for sure. And just
and it meant that a lot of people came unprepared because they didn't have Delver's packs.
correct. Um, my bone with that isn't necessarily calling the pack a Delver's pack because yeah, somebody going into a cave or a tomb or a dungeon of some sort, Delver is a pretty generic term for something like that, so that's fine. My bone of contention, if you will, was more referring to the thief or rogue class as Delver because that just makes it instead of making it sound like they had a special training or some sort of like niche ability. It basically came off as saying, okay, you've got these people who can use magic, you got these people who are really great at combat, and then you got these nobodies who just show up and go. It made it sound too generic.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I have always had an issue with renaming things just for the sake of renaming things.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, the definition of delve is to search deep and laboriously, or to undertake an activity or occupation undeterred by difficulty or certainty, or to research or make inquiries into something. None of those are roguey
No, and again,
necessarily.
that basically describes every single character who's going into these situations. It's too generic a term in this situation. But yeah, it's I can understand maybe not necessarily wanting to use the term rogue or not necessarily wanting to label them specifically a thief, but eh, the choice here to go with Delver just I
Well,
don't know. It just
and why
it's
not? Why not go with thief?
right.
Um, it's not like anybody's going to copyright you because like every flippin' fantasy game has a thief usually.
Right. I mean, thief and rogue are pretty generic terms across the board, between whether you're talking a role playing game like this or a video game or something like that. It's all pretty pretty much a generic term at this point, just like fighter or warrior, or wizard. Um,
Well, but they didn't really use those a lot either. I mean,
mm,
we have Templar instead of we have sorcerer instead of wizard. I mean, okay, kind of, I guess.
yeah.
Um, We have Templar instead of cleric. I honestly did not understand at first that Templars were clerics because I think of Templars as being an entirely different thing.
Yeah, you would think it would be more a renaming of like a paladin. I'm guessing is what you were thinking, because I
Yeah,
hear
I
Templar and
absolutely
I picture somebody with a big ass sword and full plate mail and and helm and being a self righteous prick. Um,
I mean Templars have always been kind of envisioned as holy fighters, not clerics.
mhm.
So yeah, that really threw me. Um, oh yeah, weapons: club, hammer, mace, maul, staff, warhammer, and their god's favored weapon. But there are no godless.
No. So if I were doing that, I would have just made up a god on my own and said, "Well, this is their favorite weapon, so I'm going to use it anyway."
Oh yeah, I mean
And there's
basically.
there's no rules to say I can't, because again, they don't exist yet.
Did we decide spell casting actually ends up becoming easier, right? Like it's harder to botch than in ShadowDark.
Um, that
So
sounds right.
you get to cast spells. So first of all, there are um, cantrips
Right.
that, once again, not AD&D function. Um, you have spell slots, but you can use those spells as many times as you want until you fail a roll. But it
Yes.
is significantly harder to fail a roll than it is in ShadowDark, as I recall. Um, which almost makes this feel biased in favor uh, of magic users,
Yep.
because you know they have it easier than they normally would, and fighters are the same.
Yeah. It seemed that way to me as well.
Um, one of the Templar, so you end up okay. This got very confusing too. So you have your regular concentration spells. So let's say you've picked sleep and I don't know, light. Or no, you're level 1, you've picked sleep, period. You can still cast any other spell as a wild spell or a wild cast spell.
Right, and there was just an added difficulty in the roll, if I remember correctly.
And if you happen to roll a 2 on 2d6, you gain advantage on that. So yes, there is still advantage despite this not supposedly being, but we'll get to that too. um yeah, so you have this whole wild cast thing that gets very confusing. Um for both sorcerers and clerics.
Which I didn't I understand like why he would put that in there and what he was trying to do. But I mean, again, if you're going to end up having a spellcaster that has to rely on components, you can't really wildcast something you haven't learned, because again, with space being limited, so limited in what you can carry, it's not like you're going to walk around carrying every single spell component possible for every spell that's out there.
Well, the logic apparently was that like the spell components for sleep were sand, and oh well, you'll just scoop down and like grab some off the ground. But if you're in a dungeon, it's rock, and if you're anywhere else, it's loam.
Right.
Like actual sand is probably going to be. I mean, I guess if you're fighting a battle on a beach,
Mm,
and it's not a
possibly
beach,
along a river, stream, or lake or something like that. But yeah, you'd have to be close to a body of water for sure.
and in very specific parts of the world. Because I was going to say, If you're like running a Viking game, then most of the beaches are rock, or if you're running a game here, most of the beaches are rock.
True.
So
True.
white beaches are not a thing you get in a lot of places. Um, your holy symbol does not add to encumbrance, which is, at least that.
Thieves' Tools didn't either for the Delver, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, here's another one. We don't even have raise dead. It's turn the risen. Which I think also did not count as a spell.
No, it's an ability. Yeah.
So again, if we're looking at AD&D, AD&D you had to take it as a spell slot.
Hmm.
At least as I recall. I probably should clarify that.
Yeah,
It's been a it's been a while.
it was the same, but I think originally I think you're right. It was a spell, and then I think it was in second ed that they changed it, if I am remembering correctly. But
Um
it's been a while, and I'm
cantrips
old.
cantrips there was some confusion as to whether or not cantrips were just a free action or whether you had to wild cast. Um but again it had that very 5e type of you can actually these aren't just, fun little things. These are, things you can actually do some harm with.
Right. And if the idea was to more mimic AD&D, it should have been cantrips being just parlor tricks, not actual combat abilities.
The shadow dark, if you botch on a spell cast, the shadow dark things were, I think, fewer but also more severe, which I thought was interesting. It's bizarre to me. It's like some stuff in this is so much harder, and some of it has been made so much easier. And I really feel like the so much easier stuff has all been magic users.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Because in Shadow Dark, what is it? If you fail it, if you botch it completely, you can't. Or at least I'm thinking of in terms of a cleric. Didn't they lose the spell until they made atonement with their god or something like that?
If you
Whereas in this one, I think it was you just lost it until you had a long rest or something like that.
so for clerics, if you fail, you just lose it for the day. If you botch, you have to make atonement.
Oh, okay.
Wizards, on the other hand, if you failed, you just lost it. But if you botched, you had to roll on a table, and a whole lot of really terrible things could happen. One of which was that there was basically a permanent bubble of darkness wherever you were. Um, which meant like sunlight wouldn't go through, candles, torches, lamps, nothing. Um, but magic users also aren't dealing. Yes, they have the encumbrance issue if you're dealing with like a lot of spell components, but apparently you don't have to count spell components like, well, I have pocket sand, so I can use that for sleep. And they don't have the issue with the armor.
Mm.
So, um, advantage and disadvantage, very much a 5e kind of thing.
Hmm.
However, they handled it more like Shadow the Demon Lord, which you and I have both played and enjoyed.
Very much so.
Um, in Shadow the Demon Lord, there are banes and boons. And that means that if you have a bane or a boon, you roll a d6, and you either add or subtract that to the number that you've rolled. So it's not like advantage in 5e where you roll two d20s and take the better one or the worse one, depending on what the issue is. In Shadow the Demon Lord 2, if you have, for instance, a bane and a boon, they cancel each other out.
Right.
If you have two banes, you roll 2d6 and you take the higher one. It's not like both of them apply.
Right.
And that's basically exactly what he's done with advantage and disadvantage in this game, except that it's a d4 instead of a d6. So,
Which is great when it's a disadvantage you're rolling, but not so much when it's an advantage. Yeah, the 4 being the most that I can have to subtract from my roll is great, but if all I'm adding is 4 too on the flip side, it's not as exciting as possibility of 6.
and again, I think it probably benefits wizards. I think it benefits magic users more than it benefits warriors, because all a wizard has to do is make, what is it, 10 plus the spell level. So they need an 11 or better. So, 1 to 4 points makes a whole lot more difference than you have to roll a 15 or better.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, I think the warrior classes and their capabilities, they between strength bonuses and bonuses for weapon specialization and things like that. I mean, I think they get more bonuses off the bat to begin with. So maybe the idea here in doing something that's going to benefit a spellcaster more is to try to give some balance between the two, which I can kind of understand.
Hmm.
But you're right. If you're looking at just that one rule on its own, it does significantly favor the spellcaster.
So how did the rogue play out for you, since you were our only rogue?
I was not. I had rolled up a few rogues in case one of the players didn't
Oh,
show
that's
up, but
right. In
he ended
case
up
he didn't
showing
show, but
up.
he did show up. That's
Yeah.
right.
So I ended up playing like I said, I was a dex based fighter. And that was more so that, especially with using a finesse weapon, I had a higher chance to hit. So not necessarily more damage, but a better chance to hit and to have the higher armor class because, well, you kind of need that in most of your games.
I mean, to be fair, we were kind of all flying by the seat for this one, but
Oh, God, yeah.
good evening, Wormy. How are you? So, into the equipment, backpack, a leather sack with shoulder straps and multiple pouches, just in case you don't know what a backpack is.
Well, you know, there might be somebody playing this game who's lived under a rock for the past couple hundred years. I don't know. I got nothing.
Um, Holds up to 12 EV of EV1 equipment with a maximum total load of 10 EV for a full backpack. Ignore the first 2 EV of equipment. This is the kind of thing that we talk about when we say this is written very confusing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, my understanding is the backpack ignores 2 EV. Why, I don't.
It's basically saying you can carry 12 EV, but it only counts as 2 as long as it's in the backpack. And my guess is the
No, no, no. It's
thought.
saying ignore the first, because it says you can hold 12, but then it's a maximum load total of 10 because you're ignoring the first 2. But that
uh,
also means that if your strength is, I don't know, an 8 and your EV load is a 10, carrying a backpack doubles your capability without affecting your dexterity or your strength or your anything at all.
wasn't every doesn't correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't everybody start at the capability of being able to carry 10? Isn't that like the basis, and then you
That
add more based on strength?
Right, that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah, yeah.
if your strength only allows you to carry 10, then somehow the backpack doubles your strength if, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, no, I don't follow that logic at all. Except for the fact that you could make the argument of, well, at least it's not all strapped haphazardly to you, so it's not getting in the way. But I mean, that's that's splitting hairs. I mean, that's really not so much splitting hairs, but it's really, I don't know, given too much benefit of the doubt. Um,
And
yeah, it
why only one EV items?
because they're small. Maybe I don't know.
Well, I know, but if I've got I don't know, uh I'm trying to think of something that takes up 2 spots.
Well, let's scroll down here. Two spots would be, for example, a short bow takes up two EV spots. Um,
So if I have a short bow versus a box that is that is 1 EV slot, why can I put 2 boxes in my backpack, which would be
and
bulkier but not?
right, no, I don't follow it at all either. It makes zero sense.
I mean, technically the short bow would be lighter.
Right.
And I get that some of this is trying to keep this simple, but it feels like there's been so much stuff adding in that makes it complicated enough that I then have to say, well, how come this thing didn't get?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It tries to simplify it, but ends up complicating it more.
The other thing is that this says the EV for a bedroll is 1. The backpack, and this is where I got really confused. The EV for a backpack is 2 minimum, 10 maximum. But that's what it adds, not what it costs you.
Right.
And the rest of these are what it costs you, except for the pouches, which are the same thing. And this is this is hysterical. Skin for water or wine, 1 minimum, 1 maximum. What?
Right. So why not just put one?
Um,
But it's just, I mean, you look at this too, and it just a tinderbox is one. A crowbar is one. They're not going to take up the same amount of space, and they're not going to be the same weight. You know, a crowbar is going to be A, bulkier, and B, heavier than your tinderbox.
well, but again, um, I mean, the idea of there being crowbars in a medieval ShadowDark society period is funny. Um, but the idea was to keep it as simple as possible, which I get. Um,
As do I, which is why I would argue that some of these items, like tinderbox, torch, um, rations, even like those could have been put as halves. So that it takes two to make up your one EV, and
that seems
that
reasonable.
would make a lot more sense. And again, would free up space. Going back to the argument that especially with like a warrior character, you need to carry multiple weapons. If some of these counted for half, so that you could carry several of them, it would eliminate that um, limitation.
So I've just realized this was a thing I did not notice before. A Delver's pack costs 20 GP and has an EV of 10. So to carry a delving pack costs 10, despite the fact that there's 20 at least, maybe 25 or 30 EV worth of material here. So you assume
1,
it's really
2,
carefully packed.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20. Yeah. Hmm.
What's the top item in the delving pack?
The backpack itself, yeah. And it's yeah. And
Well, wait
those
a
are
minute.
and those
No, no,
those
no.
are quantity. Those are quantity. Yeah, I just saw that.
But what I'm saying is is the backpack part of the delving pack or is it in the delving pack?
Why would you put a backpack inside a backpack?
I don't know, but Wormy says, "Is this a game that exists or some sort of proposal for game?" So
Kind of both.
basically the rough draft of the player's guide exists, um, and it's a pay what you want on Drive Through RPG. I'm very glad it's a pay what you want because I do think it has potential, but it needs a lot of work. Um, he initially was charging for it, and the first time I ever read through this, I got really angry. I was like, "Why are you charging to get people to like beta read your thing and tell you where it's wrong and fix it? This feels like a video game. This feels like a video game thing." Um, but yeah, this is really unclear. Like, is the backpack in the delving pack or is it holding the delving pack?
I mean, I would assume it's holding it. Like that's just a list of the items that you're getting for your 20 gold pieces.
Well,
So I would assume that it's a backpack with all that other shit inside of it.
but the issue is that it has said a backpack holds no more than 12, and yet we've already decided that there are 20.
Well, there's 20 items. If you look above, iron spikes, 10 iron spikes is only 1 EV. Rations, there's 6, so that would be 2 EV. So if you add up the EV by itself, let's take out the backpack. So bedrolls 1, crowbars makes 2, grappling hook makes 3, iron spikes total makes 4,
Oh, I see what you're
mallet
saying. Okay.
5, rations would be 6 and 7, then 8, 9, 10, 12. So there is 12 EV worth of stuff inside there if you take out the backpack.
Okay, so that makes more sense. It still needs to be written better
Hmm.
because that makes it look like they have, in fact, put a backpack in the delving pack. I mean, I put grain bags inside grain bags, so.
I mean, yeah.
Um, I do like the fact that it went back to the old school thing about like not everyone can use every weapon, which we seem to be getting further and further away from.
I agree. Because let's face it, not every the idea that every single in more modern renditions that every single, let's say, wizard or sorcerer or whatever could pick up and use a sword. No, that takes many years of practice and training, and if you spent all your time with your nose in a book, you're not going to have necessarily had the time or even inclination to spend the amount of training to be able to confidently use a large bladed weapon. So I agree, like limiting each class to the weapons that make sense for them was definitely a breath of fresh air.
Right. Um, I did find some of the EV figurings for that to be odd.
Agreed.
A mace is one EV. A mace is basically a pole with a club on the end of it.
Hmm.
Heavy object.
Sure.
A morning star is 3 EV. It is also uh, a long pole with a heavy thing on the end, except it has spikes.
Yeah, and why would those spikes equal out to 2 more EV?
Yeah.
Because again, when a tinderbox is only 1 EV, a bunch of spikes at the end of a weapon isn't going to be 2. Uh,
Spears are 2, but let's see, where did I just find it? Pole arms are 3. Spears
okay. I
spears are pole arms.
yes. I mean, technically, but I'm assuming is the damage the same between the two? Let's see. No, because it's 1d6 and your pole arm is 1d8 plus 1. So you could
No,
make
pole
the
arms. No. Pole arms are 1d6 plus 1. Spears are
no,
1d6.
pike is 1d6 plus 1. Pole arm is 1d8 plus 1.
This brings us back to the different versions because if you look at mine,
Ah.
which is up on the screen, they are
Oh,
both
I'm
1d6.
looking at mine. Yeah, so that
They are
that that
both 1d6 plus 1. Yeah, I do have to say having to keep up with how frequently he has to change things. Hammer 1d4. I assure you, if you've ever been hit with a hammer, it does more than 1d4.
I mean, if you're talking a real hammer, yeah, but if you're talking like maybe out of a kid's make believe toolbox, no, I'm kidding. Um, yeah, some of these don't make sense at all.
This is too much like what every time someone buys something, you have to look up prices. I had currency in my game, then just cut it out because it's not necessarily necessary. Same with carrying stuff. I mean, there are games out there. Gave players a set amount of slots, made mission required items separately.
Mm.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what this is trying to do. It's just made things too complicated. Again, ShadowDark basically says, with the exception of really big gummy items, everything is just one. Period. Like even I think most weapons are even all one because the idea is you're putting it in a specially designed sheath on your side or you're carrying it in one hand, one or the other.
If I remember correctly, yes, until you get into some of like the great swords and great axes and obviously bigger, heavier, bulkier items, I think might have been two.
Well, that's why I said other than
Yeah.
big gummy
But
items like
but yeah,
armor. I think
but yeah, you're right. Like long sword and short sword would both be one, as opposed to in here where it's one and two.
that does give it a little bit of a video game feel though, where you like literally just have slots and you can wear one set of armor and you know
I mean, I'm okay with having the different EV values for different armor because that makes sense. Because if you're going back to classic encumbrance rules based on weight, yeah, obviously you know scale is going to weigh more than studded leather, but I think there should be a more significant um, variation because if you look at the EV values of armor, uh, padded soft leather armor is one, and then leather armor is two. Well, I mean, there's not going to be too much difference between the two. I would say they should both be at one. And then studded leather goes up to three. Well, the studs that are used in studded leather wouldn't weigh enough to justify jacking it up an entire EV's worth.
well, and the other thing is that where Shadow Dark basically said we're going to keep this really simple, it's just a number of slots.
Hmm.
This has attempted to combine that number of slots with encumbrance.
Right.
Except that when the first thing you do is say, okay, you have an EV of 10, but now we're going to add a backpack and suddenly your strength is twice as strong.
So why even bother with the encumbrance to begin with if you're going to do that? Yeah.
I mean, what about a backpack suddenly makes you able to carry twice as much?
It's almost as if like the mindset there is that every single backpack is a bag of holding.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, if you look at armor, armor is quite heavy. Like, if you're looking at plate armor or something,
Sure.
but you're not carrying it in your arms, you're distributing it over your body.
Right.
And what I have heard is that makes it not nearly so hard to carry.
Yeah, that's simple physics.
Um, I, on the other hand, have carried a high school backpack that was, crammed full of far too many books. And I know what it did to my shoulders.
Valid.
So having a backpack in and of itself is,
I mean, it does help because again, you're distributing the load, but I don't think it helps to the degree that at least the way we're reading the rules here would imply. Because, like you said, I don't think if your basic EV is 10 and this allows you 10 more, it's a backpack would not double your carrying capacity just because it's strapped to your back in a neat, organized manner.
I mean, basically what it does is give you more pockets,
I like
which works.
pockets.
So if you were using the ShadowDark thing about we're not worrying about encumbrance, we're worrying about space, that would make sense.
Hmm.
But when you're actively worrying about encumbrance, then a backpack should affect your encumbrance. Um, I don't know. It just seems more complicated than,
Then it should be.
yeah. Advantage, disadvantage, we covered that. Making checks. I mean, making checks is basically exactly the same as D20.
Yeah.
Um, so that didn't really get away from 5e at all. Using attributes. This strikes me that it probably should have gone earlier under the actual attributes.
There was a little bit of a description for those up there, I think.
I think there was, yeah. I'm just saying that I'm not.
It would have made more sense to have it all together. Sure. I can follow that.
Oh, rounds and turns. Yeah, I have
Yeah. Yeah. Let's
I
get
have
into this.
I have one note here that says very clearly the turn system sucks.
Yep.
The pen looks like it was pressed down really hard when this was written. Um, Time is measured in rounds. Each player takes a turn. So, okay, for those who haven't played ShadowDark, in ShadowDark, everybody rolls. Whoever gets the highest number goes first, and then it goes clockwise. So
Which
I'm not.
makes
Uh,
perfect sense, and it's beautiful and easy to keep track of, and I love it.
I was going to say, one of our other players does not like it because technically you're supposed to do it for the entire. So let's say Jack goes first. Jack goes first the whole session. Um,
Was it the whole session or just each
te-
individual
technically,
combat?
technically, it's the whole thing,
Oh wow.
but nobody liked that, so we just went with combat
Yeah.
because
Okay.
that seemed much more rational.
Yes.
Um, and it keeps me from going, what number was I on again? Because I do that all the time.
Yep.
In this case, you have to roll for turns just to move forward, which means if Jack has a dexterity of 3, but he rolls the highest number, he has to go first, which makes no role playing sense whatsoever. And then they get in combat. And somebody else goes first. So Jack and everyone else roll. Jack once again rolls the highest number. He then rolls against me. So I'm not just one of the circle now. I'm now rolling directly against him, which like the whole point is to like yes, GMs run this world, but it is not supposed to be GM versus players. That makes it very much GM versus players.
Mm-hmm.
If I win, all of the NPCs go before all of the players, no matter what. And then once combat's over, you roll again to find out who's walking the party forward.
To
So
call
tell
it
us,
to call it frustrating would be A
I was going to
momentous
say,
understatement.
so from the player's perspective, tell us how frustratingly that went.
It's I mean, like you said, if you go with traditional initiative, as far as in order of number, and that can get confusing. Um, that is much easier to follow than this bullshit. Because it's because like you said with Shadow Dark, it's highest goes, and then it's clockwise from there. It's the same in this, except for the fact that, like you said, it's only players and then GM, or GM and then players. So when your GM is in the middle of the circle and you're skipping over, it adds that next level of confusion. There were a couple times where you were like, "Hey, did I go this round?" Because again, by the time we got to the end, it was all blurring together and confusing.
Well, but the other thing is that if I go last at the during turn 1 and first during turn 2, I could easily wipe you guys out before anyone ever gets to take a turn.
Precisely.
What is the setup? What's the point? What are you doing? Is there lore? What's the point once you have learned all these rules? It's basically, Wormy, are you familiar with ShadowDark at all? This is supposed to be ShadowDark, except using older school rules, which they didn't incorporate very much or very often, I don't think.
No, not yet.
Um, you are supposed to use the rules to basically go dungeon diving and collect treasure. That's the basic idea. And Goofus the Doofus is here. Welcome. I showed up late. I want a real professional's opinion on the subject. Where's Zephyr? Zephyr is feeling very sick because Zephyr found a whole clutch of hidden chicken eggs that had been sitting around for God only knows how long.
Oh no, he didn't.
Of course he did. Talk about a
Oh,
food hound.
yeah, that's true. This shouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. The other day, the rabbit tried to go back in her box, and she gets to the box and she looks in the box, and then she turns around and she like leaves. And I'm like, no, 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 it's dinner time. So I go over and I grab her food and I put her food in it. She hops back over, looks in the box, starts to leave, and I'm like, what's going on? Because normally, like, you rattle her food and she just bolts right for her crate.
Right.
I look in, the dog has climbed into her crate and is taking a nap.
Oh, Zephyr.
Uh, he's a good old boy, but man, lately these days he is just crazy. Goofus, thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate it. As always, I have some Hopper stories for you later. Let's see. Time passes. Yeah, the time is different than usual too, which I guess I don't really have an issue with. I mean, there's nothing that says it has to be all the time. It's just it's so normally a round is 6 seconds, and in this game I think it's 3 seconds.
Mm,
Because the idea normally is 6 seconds, 10 rounds makes a turn. And in this case, they're worrying more about 10 turns equaling an hour. Um, and yet, when you're in combat, which is the time you're mainly worrying about uh, time, yeah, it gets confusing.
yeah, yeah. Uh, I still can't make sense of it.
So, like ShadowDark, the idea is you have to have a light source. Um, Light sources last for an hour. The thing I did not like about this game is that if Jack has a torch and 30 minutes in I light another torch, my torch for some reason goes out in 30 minutes when his does.
Yeah, I didn't get that either
So,
because
I mean, it does say use your best discretion, avoid being punitive, but he does specify there should only be one active light timer except in rare cases. That makes absolutely no sense to me because practically it makes far more sense if you were worrying about light for two people to have a light and for them to alternate every 30 minutes.
right, because then you're gonna excuse me, because then you're gonna have a constant source and not be scrambling every time a torch snuffs out.
Now, to be fair, total darkness, like in ShadowDark, total darkness means the players have disadvantage. Um, However, in ShadowDark, the enemies all have advantage as well.
Right.
So that does balance that out a little bit. Distances, this is a common, very common role playing thing in general. This is not this game. I want to make that very clear. 30 feet is near, 5 feet is close. And then usually it's like 60 or 90 feet is medium and 120 feet is far or something like that. Someday, if you want to do an experiment, get uh, a, well, one of those old fashioned lanterns or a torch or something like that. Get a room that is entirely pitch dark and turn it on and see how far you can actually see. The answer is maybe 5 feet that you
Yeah.
can see clearly. And yet, every role playing game ever is like, you can see up to 30 feet in pitch black.
Well, maybe if you had, like a hooded lantern that can focus the light, you might be able to see further than 5, but it'd be in a very narrow, very limited, pool. But yeah, the
Yeah.
the whole like with one torch you can see 30 feet. Yeah, that no, not at all.
All right. So, what did we like? I don't want to like, I try very hard to like make sure that we talk a lot about the things that we like well, as opposed to
Well, I
like,
know, I know. I always say that I like a much more in-depth character creation, but I will say the simplicity of creating a character in this game was kind of enjoyable because where it's, you don't have different abilities to pick from. You have your set ones for your class and then you roll to see what your extra one is. It makes it a lot quicker to build a character so that you're not like hemming and hawing over, well, do I want to take this or do I want to take that? It makes it easier to roll up. So
if you die and have to roll up another character while everyone else is finishing the combat, it doesn't take that long.
that is exactly what I was just about to say. Or if you're like in our case where we weren't sure who was all going to show up and what we were going to have, rolling up a couple of characters to have just in case so that we can not all be the same class or something like that. It made it uh less of a chore to roll up a couple to have on hand. So
The thing I did find a little strange about this, but I think a lot of people would probably like, is that it is actually significantly harder to die in this game than it is ShadowDark. You lose a life point per round unless healed or stable. Pretty much anyone can stabilize.
right.
Um, any intelligent creature, which is not the case in ShadowDark, I don't think. But you basically have until you run out of constitution as opposed to, 3 and you're done.
Right. So
Another
for
Jay
somebody,
says, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so like for somebody with like a 12 or 13 constitution, they're gonna stick around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, or, if you get a constitution, which again is pretty realistic. If you have a
Yeah.
constitution of 18, you know,
You're gonna survive a little bit better than somebody with a 5. So that does make a lot of sense.
Razor says I heard roll up a couple. Another Jay says, how do you feel about high lethality games that encourage having a backup character? I think it works really well in some games. I mean, ShadowDark, you go in knowing you're likely to die, and you know, having a backup character isn't a terrible idea. I always put people on a ship with a whole bunch of other people, so if someone dies, you can easily slot somebody else in. You just take over one of the other crew. Jack?
You know, if you're going into it knowing that it's intended to be a high lethality game, I'm all for it because it's almost I take it almost as a challenge at that point of like, okay, how long can I survive, or how can I create a character specifically to survive the longest? Um, what I have an issue with is when a game or a specific session or anything like that isn't necessarily intended to be that way and turns into that. That's where I have an issue with it. Um,
If it's a
and that's
product of the game and not the GM.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I have entire sessions where there's no combat at all. If I'm running something like Numenera, you know,
Hmm.
there might be no combat at all. In which case, it's unrealistic for people to go in thinking like, "Oh yeah, I'm probably going to die like every session." Um, Shadow the Demon Lord, eh. If I'm running Paranoia, I mean, if anyone is running Paranoia, you should expect to die. Um, Hello, Hamster. Just in time for the Paranoia conversation. Perfect timing. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say it depends on the system. Like, there are systems that are intended to be highly lethal, in which case, sure, bring another.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
Challenge,
there are
challenge
individual
accepted.
games. There are individual games. Shadow the Demon Lord is not necessarily designed to be um, a high lethality game, but it does occasionally have gauntlet adventures,
Ooh,
which are designed to be high lethality games.
that sounds like it could be fun.
Um, I, while I think there were parts of this that ended up being more complicated than I think the author intended, I do sometimes really just like to run a game that where everything is fairly simple and I'm not constantly going, what system are we running again? Is there?
Or having to double check rules as you go along constantly. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the idea of a simpler approach. Um, in the words of Henry David Thoreau, as you simplify your life, the laws of the universe will be simpler. So, you know, the idea of minimizing complication in order to focus on the gameplay and be able to get through more of a game without having to constantly double check rules or worry about whether it's supposed to be one thing or another. I'm all for. Um, so I definitely give kudos to the author for starting and trying that. Definitely got a ways to go with some of the rules in here, and like you said, not having all of the materials like the GM guide and everything like that available yet adds to the complication. So when everything is out there and it's finalized or at least closer to being finalized, I'm definitely all for giving it another try to see how it all comes together because I think if the intent of the game is realized, it could be a lot of fun.
I do too, but I am still left. I was going to end on this one, but I am still left with the question, why would I play this instead of ShadowDark? I
Um,
I don't. Yes, there are some slight differences. Um, but I don't know that there's enough that it makes. I don't know. Did you really feel like it made that much of a difference between the two systems?
I don't, but I will say, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you'll know exactly where I'm going with this. Shadow Dark did not let you have the ability to play as an elf, right?
Uh, I think you're right. I do think it's more sword and sorcery that way.
So for me, the only advantage I see as far as like within our, especially with our group of this game over Shadow Dark, is again just my ability to play an elf so I can piss off that one guy. But as far as like the game overall and the way the game plays and everything like that, yeah, I as things stand right now, I given the choice, I would pick Shadow Dark every time.
Uh, so according to the evil AI, uh, under Brave, it says yes, players can choose several standard ancestries from Shadowdark rules, including human, elf, dwarf,
Oh, okay.
halfling, half orc, and goblin. So actually, there are more choices in Shadowdark.
So then, yeah, I
That's weird, though. I don't actually remember that being. Is it maybe it's just because everyone played a human when we played?
could be, could be.
Yeah, because we did
Um,
that kind of Viking-based game, and I
oh
think I
yes, we all agreed that
yeah, I think
maybe,
maybe
yeah,
I limited everyone to humans because I was specifically going for a Viking theme.
that could be. So yeah, given that, then the only situation in which I could see this having any advantage over Shadow Dark is if it's kind of like a last minute, you've got a group of people who are like, hey, we've got the afternoon free, let's just kind of play a quick game. It'd be easier to get characters set up and jump into something with this in that kind of a situation.
So
That would be the only advantage.
I do want to say I just found out someone actually asked on drive-through. This looks promising. It does resemble ShadowDark quite a bit. What would you say are the main differences between GloomRaider and ShadowDark? And the publisher said, "Thanks. In short, I'd say GloomRaider is like ShadowDark for AD&D instead of 5e. The primary difference is in the way various mechanics are handled. I go more with old school D&D mechanics as opposed to 5e mechanics. If you're familiar with all the editions of D&D, you'll see bits and pieces of many of them.
Hmm.
Ability score modifiers are the traditional bell curve, -3 +3 basic D&D editions. Modifier improvements are more tied to leveling than increasing ability scores. Pre-Wizards of the Coast D&D. Racial ability scores, AD&D. Racial traits, AD&D. Spells, AD&D and basic D&D. Casting spells including Vanson style. The monsters are more AD&D. Class traits are more in line with AD&D things from Shadowdark that I handled differently. Advantage and disadvantages adding or subtracting a d4. Class traits are a bit different but generated similarly. Incorporates roll to cast spells differently. Gear slots are similar but have slight differences. The 1 hour real time is unchanged. In general, GloomRaider is more like AD&D and basic D&D than 5e and ShadowDark, but is easily adapted into ShadowDark as house rules.
Hmm.
See, I had originally just heard the AD&D thing, and I just don't notice a whole lot of AD&D. I do notice more basic D&D, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Again, I think a lot of that is because a lot of the AD&D he's included is in spells. One, it's been a long time since I played AD&D, and two, never played a spellcaster.
Precisely. Same here.
For all the reasons we all know. Um, Resting is different and far easier in this game as well. Um, consume a ration, sleep comfortably 8 hours, boom, you're no longer wounded. Can't sleep in your armor though. That is one thing that has always bugged me about like every edition of D&D. People are just like, yeah, I just slept in my armor, so when people attack in the middle of the night, I'm just magically like already armored up. No, like
So
that's
I would agree if you're talking like especially a full suit of plate. I would say there should be some leeway given for some of the lighter armors, because especially if you're talking like in this game, the basic padded or leather, or maybe even up to studded leather, it's not that much different than wearing leather clothes with or having a heavy jacket on top of that. So it's I think there
yeah.
should
But are
be.
you gonna adventure and hike all day and then sleep in the same stuff and then get up and adventure and hike all day and then sleep in the same stuff?
Me personally, hell no.
I mean, realistically, if you look at any historical renditions, if people attack in the middle of the night, what you get is a whole lot of people running out of their tent naked.
Well, let's just say it's a good thing that we are not LARPing this then. Um, Cause yeah.
But I mean, the fact is that like sleeping in armor of any type. I mean, you're not even going to sleep in a leather jacket. It would be incredibly uncomfortable.
No, I agree, but it's just again, I guess it's just my bone of contention with the way encumbrance is done and stuff like that too. Like it's certain things I feel like should be based on the um the weight and the bulkiness and the cumbersomeness of what the character is wearing.
I mean, I do think that one of the rules is, I mean, I've already gone by it, but I can look it up again if need be. I do think, if I recall, one of the rules is that you have to roll in this version. You have to roll like your Constitution minus the armor class, which means that yes, the bulkier armors are going to subtract more.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So Hamster says, sounds like it borrowed from a lot of versions, possibly too many to build their sweet spot. Silly part of me wants to say house ruling is basically swapping out one D&D rule for another D&D rule. Deck build your RPG. Honey Amazon, I have seen people fall asleep in chainmail. You absolutely can sleep in armor. I'm not saying you can't sleep in armor. I'm saying that it's going to get super disgusting. And you're going to end up with sores if you do it for too often. Hey,
Well,
Rio, welcome.
that's an interesting point. Like nobody's ever put that kind of a mechanic in a game. Hmm. Just the whole. Now I'm thinking about things that could be done in other games. Just the whole cleanliness aspect of things. You make a very good point there. Like if you're going 2-3 weeks on an adventure and never bathing once, there's going to be some health detriment there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But I've never seen that kind of a thing built into a game. Hmm.
That's how they rolled back in the day. One set of clothes you only take off once a month for a bath, but only if you really need it. No, Wormy, that's not true. That's just not true. I mean, yes, we have this idea of like everyone being gross and disgusting and unbathed, but it the actuality of that is I mean, yes, there's a lot of body odor, especially in the wintertime, because in Europe got cold and the water got cold and heating water was hard. Humans and hygiene. Hello to as your GM. But like every village had a washerwoman that like took all of your clothes and washed them and gave them back to you. Um,
And there's some historical evidence to show, Vikings, for example, were almost as hygienic as we are. Like they
yeah,
they took it very seriously,
like the Europeans got really mad because the Vikings were stealing all their women because they dared comb their hair.
and they didn't smell like shit.
They bathed once a week and they combed their hair. Yeah, combing your hair was actually like a huge status symbol, I think, if I remember correctly. Because like combs had to be specially made and carved, and like the fancier your comb, the more wealth you had. So people would stand in the village square and comb their hair just to show off their comb.
Uh, to
Wearing
some degree,
clothes
that still exists.
Wearing clothes for that long can get grimy, but how many DMs want to track or enforce that during a campaign? It feels inevitable that someone won't.
Oh, I agree. I just think it would be interesting to try it out or have some sort of a mechanic for it, just to just for pardon the pun here, but just for shits and giggles.
Scrolls contain magic spells. We covered most of the spellcasting stuff, but I
Yeah.
forgot the scroll thing. Scrolls contain magic spells. Spellcasters can use them to cast these spells if the spell is on their spell list, even if they don't know the spell, which is very confusing because if you get into the wild casting says that they can use anything on their spell list, even if they haven't memorized it. They just have to wildcast it. So I'm not totally certain what the difference is.
Does is there like less of a penalty with a scroll? Maybe that was going to
It
be the
says
intention.
treat this the same as normal spell casting with the following additions. Casting a spell from a scroll works like casting a spell that is memorized or prayed, so no wild casting. Except it takes a complete round to use, and the spell is cast at the end of the round. So that's exactly what happens with wild casting, if I remember correctly. After casting the spell from a scroll, the magical writing disappears from the scroll and it ceases to work. So in AD&D, the whole point of scrolls were it was a chance at a new spell. Um, Wormy, if they in fact want to get gangrene and get untreated bed sores, I am all for that. That is exactly the kind of game I would probably run.
It's not wrong.
Imagine your party getting found out because your rogue didn't bathe for 6 months and the enemy could smell him a mile away.
See, this is what I'm saying. You could be quiet as hell, but if you smell like, uh, death covered in shit wrapped in rotting fruit, it doesn't matter how quiet or sneaky you are. You're gonna get found out.
Honey Amazon, it would be fun to have a system that says the thicker the armor, the more shit your sleep is going to be, thus adding a malus like tiredness or unrest if you sleep in armor too long. Well, I think that's what we were saying. This system actually does have that, which we really like about it. Um, can the paper be used for another spell afterwards? If not, it just sounds wasteful. I mean, wizards are the only ones that can write mostly, so.
Well, hey, maybe you could use that scroll after it's spent as one of the torches that you need to build a fire.
Wands and staffs, a specially crafted wand or staff, can be used in the wild casting of arcane spells. Doing so gains advantage on the wild casting spell check. On a critical failure, the spellcaster incurs a mishap as usual, but additionally, wands will break and permanently cease to work. Wands and staffs are imbued with their own magical powers and abilities that can be used for wild casting arcane spells, but with all the same risks. Your GM has information on wands and staffs. No, I don't. It's a lie! It's a lie!
Well, you might at some point, in theory,
In theory.
allegedly.
So the miscasting spells, arcane miscasting, which only works for sorcerers. I think too, like in this one, you can like learn new spells all the time, whereas I think basically in ShadowDark, I think you're kind of stuck with whatever your spells are. in
Yeah, I
general.
don't recall because again, I don't
Yeah, I
ever play
again,
spellcasters. So
magic users, magic users.
you. Oh,
Rachel says, I can just imagine the whole party turning to look at the smelliest character like you filthy son of a bitch. Also, it'd be the other way around. Imagine if your rogue smells like honey and roses while everyone else smells like dog shit and burned meat. That's another way to get found out.
very valid point. Absolutely.
All I can think of is um, Riddick when he sniffs the woman and he's like, "It's been a long time since I smelled beautiful."
Oh, geez, I had forgotten about that. Yeah.
Um,
Because
range
that's not
determines what
creepy.
distance you can deliver the spell's effects, except it's not really doesn't really tell it. Oh, they do have a component pouch, which is interesting. It comes under spell attributes, not under equipment.
Because that makes sense.
It's a component pouch, 5 gold pieces, a small watertight leather belt pouch that has compartments to hold all the material components needed to cast spells, except for those components that have a specific cost. So I guess this is the pocket you put your pocket sand in.
Yeah.
Um, spells requiring material components are cast at the end of the round. The spell was cast in are susceptible to being disrupted, causing the spell casting to fail. While casting spells with the components takes a full turn to cast. Spells. Oh, so there's the difference between scrolls. You don't have to have the spell components.
But again, I'm just. The whole idea of carrying spell components for a spell that you don't know for wild casting, it just seems.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing. I'm simply saying that we were trying to figure out what the benefit of scrolls was.
Yeah. Yep.
And the benefit is that
That
if you
counts as
don't
the component. Yeah.
um it it varied. So the other thing was that there used to be certain skills that I think rogues could take that would allow them to use scrolls in AD&D,
I don't
if I
think that
recall.
was until some of the more recent editions, though. I don't think that was early on.
Mm,
I
I
could
mean,
be
I
wrong,
haven't
though.
played anything since 2E, so yeah, somebody asked me the other day, they asked me a question about like what was it? When did wisdom stop meaning willpower? And I was like, I didn't know it had ever done willpower. Like it was like this. And they're like, no, no, no. In third edition, it like definitely was. And I was like, oh, there's your problem. Didn't play third edition. Realized right around the AD&D second edition when they came out with third edition that I really liked horror games better.
Fair.
Haven't played D. Well, I take that back. I have played 5e a couple of times.
Oh, that's right, because you were in that one game as the were hippo.
I played it once, yep, and I really do. What is the name of the company? There's a German company called Virgo. Let me think. Vortex Verlag. That's what it is. It's Vortex Verlag. They make 5e based games that are, but they're historical, and they've hired experts in like the Italian Renaissance period, and all of their games are basically historical fantasy. And
Mm.
they did an excellent job with it. That is the one. I mean, I don't normally like pre-made adventures at all, but not only is it a great pre-made adventure, it's a great pre-made 5e adventure, which is super weird for me to even say out loud.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did hell freeze over?
Well, a part of it is that the one that I have played was based on Dante's Inferno, and I do
Oh,
love Dante's
shut
Inferno.
up!
I do love Dante's Inferno.
Oh, that
Yeah,
sounds
that's
good.
That's the one that I wanted to run the teaser adventure next weekend.
Mm,
You basically start out with a murder mystery that brings your party together, and then you eventually end up in Dante's Inferno.
that does sound delicious.
Yeah, it's great. It is. I have run it multiple times. I still enjoy it.
Something to be said for that. That's for sure.
Yep. The only other that the Shadow the Demon Lord mega dungeon we're doing right now is the only other adventure I've ever had that I not only enjoyed but enjoyed for more than one playthrough.
Yeah, I've been enjoying that one as well.
All 10 levels are now out and are getting in the process of I don't even know where this hit worst dinner party ever. So this is interesting. I just realized that oh no, okay, never mind. I thought this was the character sheet that I had before was like one two-part one, and this one is like a front and back one. So I guess it's just designed to.
Uh,
It's designed for those of us that write large and gummy. Um, and then we're back to more equipment, which is odd. GloomRaider is a fantasy role-playing game in the dungeon crawling sword and sorcery genre. In this game, you see that's interesting. There is so much magic in this. I would not consider it sword and sorcery. And there
I'd
are
consider
other
sorcery
races.
and sword. Yeah.
Well, sword and sorcery we had a whole video about this.
Hmm.
Sword and sorcery tends to be human centric. It tends to have very little magic, if any at all, whereas this game is basically steeped in it. Um, yeah, I would not consider this sword and sorcery at all. Um, high fatality is not enough to make it sword and sorcery in my book. In this game, you use your imagination to delve into the gloom, the dark, mysterious, and deadly places deep under the surface world where untold treasure and mighty. Okay, this game technically is specifically designed for dungeon crawling only. ShadowDark is mostly designed for dungeon crawling, but can be used for other things. So that makes a lot of the rules make sense. Like you're gonna have the torch rule because you're not going to be running through a jungle, which is what I tried to do because one member of our party doesn't like straight dungeon crawls.
Hmm.
Um, untold treasures and mighty magic await those brave enough to seek them, but beware the gloom is where the creatures of nightmares live, who often venture to your world in the night seeking surface dwellers for food and servitude. Interesting. You have been blessed with certain gifts above the average folk in the world. You've been chosen to put to use either to defend the world from those denizens of the dark or simply to raid into the gloom to return with riches and glory. You are known to the common folk as a GloomRaider, a hero to some, a menace to another. So there's another thing. Very early D&D, people were heroic, but they weren't superheroes. They weren't like especially, I mean, yes, you were probably either stronger or faster or something above the average person, but mainly it was your sense of adventure and righteousness that made you um, an adventurer.
Right.
You gained magic and powers and things through your adventuring. You didn't necessarily start with them. Um, it wasn't until third edition that you started as being better than the average person. Um, so I would say this also throws some third edition in with that aspect.
Yeah.
Although not directly 100% compatible with ShadowDark, as many aspects of this game can easily be adapted or implemented as house rules. Oh, as is many aspects of this game can. Okay. Despite my terrible reading, I will say the editing in this game is pretty good. Uh, I mean, not like the proofreading. The proofreading in this game is pretty good.
Right.
My hope is you either find this game enjoyable on its own merits or at least a useful resource to extract information from for use in your ShadowDark games. Um, the art's very similar. I'm curious as to, he does say that this is entirely human made, no no AI involved. So now I'm curious, who's his artist? Not that it's necessarily going to be anyone I know, but cover art, internal art, Austin Darby. Every season I like to buy a new like background piece for my thing, so um that's kind of my goal moving forward. So I
Nice.
I'm always interested in finding new, and it's always got to be something that can kind of fade in the background and like look good without taking everything over. So
Yeah, exactly.
all right, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Again, I'll say it again. I I like the idea and the intent behind it. But until it is fully fleshed out and all the resources are available, I don't see myself getting excited about playing it again. Um,
Hmm.
Once that happens, I am definitely open-minded enough where I would give it a second try. But push come to shove, so far I would say the advantage between the two definitely goes to ShadowDark.
Yeah, I think I agree. I do think that there's some advantage with Shadow Dark in that there was a lot of playtesting that was done before the game was released, whereas in this case, the playtesting seems to be getting done by the people that are buying it and then providing feedback, and then it gets changed to match the feedback kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, Again, when he was actually charging for it, I really have issues with that kind of thing, but now that it's pay what you want, less so. I do still find myself confused about why you would ask people to play test your game when you've only got half the rules written.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
it was so I mean it may sound like I feel like I was harsher on this than almost anything else I've reviewed. But the problem is, from the game master's perspective, asking me to run a playtest of a game when there's no game master guide um, was very difficult. I mean, basically, when I say I don't understand why I wouldn't just play Shadowdark, most of the time I was having to jury rig things with Shadowdark because it was close because they didn't have rules.
Right.
Um, and so it was from my perspective, it was very frustrating. There was also an issue. The guy who played our sorcerer kept repeatedly messaging me before the game about like, well, what do I do about this, and what do I do about this, and what do I do about this? And I said, well, it's in the book. Just like look it up. Like I gave you the book for a reason. Well, but then it turned out that like your copy of the book had rules that were scattered all over the place.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so and because there were rules that were missing, he just assumed there were other rules missing. So the proofreading is good. The editing isn't bad, except that there's stuff missing. Yes, there are
Right.
a few rules that like were like, ooh, that whole armor class thing, oops. Um, but considering how many, first time. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. There is no game master book, but there are 3 adventures
That's putting the cart before the horse, as they say.
published for this. Yeah. Um, so not having enough information is incredibly frustrating from the GM point of view. Um, I think the layout could be smoother, or if nothing else, you need a table of contents and an index.
Hmm. That would be helpful
Um, but yeah, I
because
mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, because, like, for example, where we finally discovered where the pouch for the spell components was, being able to look up and see where it's supposed to be, since it wasn't where we would expect it to be, would be definitely helpful.
Well, I'm still a little confused by it because it's where you hold all your spell components except those that don't actually have a monetary value. So, do you just assume that you automatically have everything that you don't have to actually buy?
That's what it sounds like.
Well, I wasn't really sure. I mean, again, when you run out of pocket sand, does it replenish itself? Do you have to like take time to go out and find sand? If that's the one spell you have on hand and it's the one spell you've memorized, but you're out of sand,
You're kind
does
of
that
shit out of luck.
well, and this is why ShadowDark doesn't bother with components, because the whole idea is you're already going to lose the spell if you fail a roll.
Right.
So now you're going to lose the spell if you fail a roll and if you run out of components. Um, unless your pocket sand automatically replenishes itself. I don't know. I think I think you're right. I think there's a lot more development that's needed. Um, I was interested enough after reading it that I did the playthrough. I
Yeah.
have had games where I did the read through and then handed it back to people and said, uh, "Thank you for letting me read your game, but I don't think you want me to review this." um, so yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I'm torn between saying it needs to differentiate itself from ShadowDark a little more and saying, well, there are places it really needs to be a little more like ShadowDark. Or if it doesn't go like, I don't know, it needs to pick one or the other. There are places where the simpleness of ShadowDark gets lost because we tried to add other things in to make it not ShadowDark.
Right.
And there are areas where there are rules that would work very well if you went a little further away from ShadowDark.
Agreed.
If you're going to be ShadowDark except with AD&D as your base, you need to lean a little more heavily into that AD&D.
Yep.
That's my opinion. Um, but all in all, I mean, I didn't have a terrible time. It was a fun afternoon.
Yeah. No, I agree with that
Um,
wholeheartedly.
the few times we did have issues, we laughed about it. It never got to the point where anybody wanted to throw anything.
True.
That turn system, though, man, that turn system's got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd
that
say
is that is the one thing. Oh
I'd
my god.
I'd say if there's one thing, like, if this were me giving feedback directly and saying the very first thing you need to work on above anything else, it would be that for sure.
Yeah, turn system's a nightmare. If for no other reason that it is so irrational to like you had the highest X in the group, I think.
Yes.
Um, and you ended up having to be like the third one back because somebody else rolled higher and you have to go in that order.
Yep. Yep.
Which also takes a lot of the role playing out of it because the whole point of it is like coming up with tactics.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was not a bad time. It's not a it's not an awful game. It's still a work in progress. Um, and yeah, I agree with you. I think once the GM's guide is done, once we've hit, I don't know, version 2.0 instead of 2 point or 1.77, I'll take another look.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan to me.
Anything you want to plug?
Not that I can think of this time. No.
No interesting movies or television shows coming out?
I have not.
Video games? Have you played Tainted Grail yet?
I have not.
Oh, that would involve you having time to breathe. I
I
forgot
was
about
just
that.
gonna say, yeah, yeah. Between the last time you had me on and now, I haven't had much time for any of that stuff. So
Yeah, I
hopefully
totally.
that'll change sooner rather than later, and the next time I'll have more to say.
All right. Tomorrow night, we are doing the 1970s, the rise of roleplay. I have on Scott Robinson from who created Bunnies and Burrows in 1976. Mark Miller, who created Traveller. First edition came out in 1979. And Jeff D. Villains and Vigilantes, which was the, I believe, second ever superhero game, possibly the first complete superhero game. There seems to be debate about that. 1970, I can't remember if it was 76 or 78 off the top of my head. But we are going to sit down and talk about the development of role-playing games that were not D&D. Because the fact is that, yes, D&D may have been the first one and it may get all the credit, but the reason we have all the cool genres and rules that changed and new things that were tried were because of these guys. So everyone bring your questions, everything you ever wanted to know about game development and what it was like to be a game developer in the 1970s, and we will throw open the doors. The week after that, we are going to have Zombies and the Undead as our indie presentation games. And then I end up with a blank spot. So I'm hoping that everyone will drop me some ideas. I have had to combine a couple of games into our season, or a couple of sessions into our season finale, which will be on May 11th. So my 427 slot is currently open. If there is a topic that you think I should discuss, or that you would like to hear about, or a question you would like answered, or a game that you would like to talk about, please, please, please drop me a note. I could use some ideas. My brain is fried. Preps, bright cape, and siege equipment.
Now that's a party.
All right, folks. Thank you very much for being with us for our little surprise random ramble review. And I hope that everyone has a great night. Thank you very much to Fat Jack MacGill for being here again.
Thanks for having me, Goat.
And we will hopefully see everyone tomorrow. Happy headbutting.
It's a fucking goat! Eclectic Goat's got videos of indie authors and cinema love. A passion for the weird and the strange. She's snappily dressed and only slightly deranged. Come and meet the eclectic goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Shows might be a little improper. We've got real zombie, fake whizzes the otter, pizza in one hoof, glass in the other, deciding which role-playing games we will cover. Come and meet the eclectic goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Got a thing for black and white screens, crappy horror with low budget scenes. Choose on the history, spits out the law. Time for another whiskey pour. Come and meet the eclectic goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the